Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the California High-Speed Rail Authority's Board Finance and Audit Committee meeting for this, the April 22nd, 2021. On board are members of this committee, Vice Chair Nancy Miller, and Directors Ernie Camacho and Jim Gilmetti. Welcome, everybody. We'll jump right into today's agenda. However, before doing so, Mr. Secretary, do we have any members of the public who would like to address the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me go over the instructions to the members of the public who wish to provide public comment. Good morning and welcome to the California High-Speed Rail Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Today we are hosting this meeting via the Zoom application. In a moment, we will begin public comment. First, we want to run through some important technical aspects of this meeting for offering public comment. If you are logged into this meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature typically located at the bottom of your screen so that I may call on you to provide your comment. If you're dialing in by phone, pressing #2 will raise your hand and put you into our queue. Speakers will be called in the order that their hand is raised. Once you've been in the queue and your name is called, in the web meeting, please click the prompt on your screen to allow your microphone to be unmuted. On the phone, we will call you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. At that point, you'll hear a message that you're being unmuted. Once unmuted, it will be your turn to speak. Please slowly and clearly say and spell your first and last name, and if applicable, state the organization you represent. After your introduction, each speaker is allotted 2 minutes to provide comments. Our core reporter is on the line to record those comments. If they need you to spell or repeat something, they may interject. I will notify you when your time is nearly up. At the end of your comment, we will disable your microphone. However, you are welcome to stay on the line to continue watching or listening to the meeting. If you do not wish to provide comment and simply want to watch the meeting, you can do so by logging on to hsr.ca.gov and looking for the link to our live stream. Mr. Chairman, none of the attendees have raised their hands currently at this moment.
Okay, thank you, Mo. We will jump into our agenda this morning, members. Item number 1 is the consideration for the approval of the last meeting minutes on March 25th.
So moved.
Okay, a motion and second by Director Gilmetti and Director Camacho. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Passed unanimously. We'll jump over any comments from me this morning and move on to our first real item of business here, our executive summary from the Chief Financial Officer. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. I'll go through the executive summary and it'll appear on the screen in a minute. Very good. So this is the April report where we report data through the end of February 2021. And we start on the first slide at the top with the accounts payable, aging, and disputes report. Key highlights here are that we did not have any late payments in the month of February. So that's a 49-month streak without having any aged invoices or late payments. The authority at the end of February, we're tracking 76 million in disputed invoices. I think the F&A committee will recall that had grown earlier in the year. It sort of stabilized, plateaued. It fell a bit this month. We do expect that will likely fall in the coming months as some of those, I'll call them kind of one-time disputes are resolved. Going to the bottom of the page, our cash management report, starting with our Prop 1A bond fund balance at the end of February was about $53 million. That category, we do have additional bond authority available to us for the bookend projects, Caltrain and LA Union Station. So we will continue to access additional bond funds for those areas as needed. Probably some with the spring bond sale that the Treasurer will be holding over the next month. Moving to cap and trade cash balance. This month over month reflects a bit of a decline to 1,669 million at the end of February. We will note that there are two auctions, cap and trade auctions that have occurred that aren't yet reflected in the cash balance. We do wait for the Department of Finance to complete their work and for the controller to complete their work before we reflect the cash. But we do have what we expect to be 148 million from the November 2020 auction and about 162 million from the February auction. I believe next month we will be able to include the November report cash in our reporting. The next cap and trade auction is May 19th. That could be a good one in terms of we expect the Air Resources Board to offer up some previously unsold allowances from last May and last August, where the auctions were undersubscribed and they had unsold allowances due to COVID. So we never know, of course, with the auctions, and different things could happen between now and May 19th that could affect the sales, but certainly at least has a potential to be a good, strong auction in May. And we'll, of course, report that when we get the initial auction results in. Lastly, we report the Rail Property Management Fund, which receives our revenues related to property. That balance has continued to grow with revenues coming in faster than expenditures, but I've mentioned before that we have a budget request before the legislature to increase our annual expenditure authority out of this fund to cover more of our property related costs. And if we get that, we'll probably start to see that particular fund decline in balance over time.
Brian, do you have any comment just on the drop in the value of in-process invoices?
Well, let's see. Number of in-process invoices look like last month was 178, and this in February was 215. Is that number?
No, I'm sorry if I didn't say that. I meant to say the value, that just the drop in value. Is there any concern there?
Oh, I see the line you're looking at. Well, we no, in the sense of being maybe a leading indicator, if you will. We do have a flash report we're going to do at the end of this presentation on the March numbers.
Yeah.
So the March numbers in terms of our expected expenditures are actually up over February. So in this case, that value of in-process invoices doesn't reflect, at least for March, a decline. And I'm not sure there was an expectation when we get to April, not necessarily expecting a decline. So that might be rather a timing fluctuation.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
I think we can go to the next slide. So this is our administrative budget report. A budget for the fiscal year is $73 million. We've been expending at a fairly steady rate of about 4 million a month. It's a little bit of an increase over time as we do continue in most months to fill additional vacancies with additional state staff. So it is generally an increasing monthly expenditure, but here it's 4 million for the month of February. We do reflect through February, that's of course about 2/3 of the fiscal year done. And we show we've spent in total about $29 million. So we're certainly going to be in budget this year. That's about 40% of our budget expended with about 67% of our year done.
Yeah.
On the vacancy side, the rate is about 27%, and that does continue to come down from a high of 37%. Where we started in July. Of course, we received a large number of new state positions in the last budget, so that's why we started with such a high base. The authority has filled a total of 184 vacant positions since July 2019. So again, the pace is fairly good, about 9 positions filled a month. But of course, it's a moving target, and we do have some people retire, and sometimes there's a promotion that leads to, a net zero in the short term as we continue to work to fill vacancies. Next slide, please. So this is just another look at our vacancies and our authorized positions, but this slide adds the consultant workforce as well. The chart on the top gives both the full-time equivalent positions filled for RDP, where you see for 2021 column there, 293 filled rail delivery partner positions. Again, that's a full-time equivalent, and we pick that up as kind of an average to date in the fiscal year to not overemphasize a monthly fluctuation with holidays or whatnot. And our state staff, again, at 260 filled positions. The bar chart is just an illustration of the change over time, where we have been on trend to reduce consultants and have done that quite a bit already. A little bit further to do to get to the 270 full-time equivalent rail delivery partner positions and the 356 state staff positions. Next slide. So this is our capital outlay budget summary, and fairly consistent with our quick, what we call the flash report provided last month. The total capital expenditures for the month of February were about $64 million, which was fairly similar month over month to January. Breaking it down by a couple categories, where we look specifically at the design build contracts. Those totaled in the month of February to $30.5 million. And that's about the third bullet down, where we show the breakdown by each CP. They were all about the same, around $10 million that month. We also show the overall construction package spending for the month, which was 51 million. That includes the things like right-of-way purchase and the project construction manager cost. And again, what would be remaining after that 51 million would be the project development, environmental work, things of that nature, the bookend expenditures, and the bottom table does reflect those as well, to show again the total monthly spend of 63.7. Of course, we are, for the year to date, about 785 million, which is of course lower than the budget or forecast. One thing to note in this bottom box again, and this had come up in our contingency reporting a few months ago, we do reflect a line called time impact analysis payments, TIA payments, in the bottom chart. And that reflects an $11 million TIA payment for CP4 that was previously reported in the contingency area, but now we're showing it as an expenditure here. I'll go on to the next slide if there are no questions. So this top chart is our total project expenditures, about $8.1 billion. And that breaks it out by area. About 75% of our expenditures to date are in construction, 16% in project development, et cetera. The bottom chart is our state match to ARA chart. And at the end of February, we had fully submitted invoices to meet the match. Of that, the federal government had approved about $1.6 billion, and they were still reviewing $909 million. So that's as of the end of February. I can give you an update. We did not have any further federal action in March, but just earlier this week on Monday, they approved an additional $577 million. So that brings our total approved to almost $2.2 billion, and leaves about $332 million that's pending final FRA review and approval. So another big leap in completing this ARA match, and we certainly hope with the federal government now fully engaged and fairly quickly reviewing our match submittals, that we'll be able to complete their review, answer any follow-up questions they have in the coming months. Can move on to the next slide. Our contract and expenditure report, number of contracts down just a bit at 198 at the end of February. Month over month, the value of active contracts decreased by about 45 million. That's reflected on the second line here, with the total value of active contracts at about 8.4 billion. My understanding there was a couple of the right-of-way contracts expired, and there was some unexpended amount, but they're new contracts either in place or soon to be fully executed that would backfill for any expired contract. The other thing we note on this report is the small business utilization rate on the last line of the table, and that has been fairly steady the last year or so, as you see on this display, about 21.3% in this case. And the last bullet on the page here, we provide the amount of small businesses. We have 609 small businesses actively working on the project, including 192 DBEs and 67 certified DVBEs. Go on to the next slide. So this is our contingency reporting, and we did change the notes here. The first bullet under the notes does state that these numbers on our contingency are relative to our 2019 baseline. The business plan, of course, did include a new proposed budget. We bring that to the board as a separate action. Probably in June, we would bring to the full board the revised baseline and budget for 21-22. Upon board action of any baseline changes, we would then build those in. So this baseline is what we call the Rev 1, or the May 2019 baseline. For the month of February, the chart on the bottom right reflects invoices in the construction package area, change orders rather, in the construction package area that totaled $11 million, and there were actually 11 invoices. So these were invoices that ranged in cost, change orders that ranged in cost from $29,000 to about $1.8 million. Those are further outlined individually in the Central Valley status report, which Joe will present as well. The other thing to note here is perhaps I'll focus on the remaining contingency as of this Rev 1 reporting, second line in the table where it says project contingency. If you go across to the end, show remaining balance of $731 million. That's the remainder of the original allocation of about $2,662 million. We don't, as you move down line by line here to unallocated contingency, interim use contingency, and then the other category, those particular pots don't tend to get pulled from on a month-to-month basis. So, for example, all of the 11 million here is out of the project contingency line. But I did want to note on the other category that to the far right shows $280 million. That is a category that includes three main items: the track and systems, upcoming track and systems contract contingency, that's about $216 million. some environmental project development contingency of 47 million, and then a rail delivery partner contingency of 34 million. And as Brian Kelly had mentioned, I believe at a board meeting a few months ago, we are anticipating a re-procurement of the RDP contract and coming to the board in February with a request for proposal with asking the board for approval to move forward with that RDP re-procurement, and then likely in the spring bring back a recommendation to approve a new contract. In the interim, we are the current RDP contract expires in June of 22, and to ensure we have enough cash resources to get ourselves to June, we're going to take a few actions, and one of them is using the contingency that's in this other item. There's 34 million in this other item set aside for the RDP contract, and we do expect to utilize that. We'll come back in this report in a later month and report when that has been done, but I just wanted to mention that as a pending item since we don't often pull from these other contingency items other than the CP contingencies.
Thanks for that update, Brian.
Sure. Next slide, please. This is our early report, or sometimes we internally call the flash report for the month of March. We will report comprehensively March numbers next month at the May F&A meeting, but this is our preliminary look. And you'll notice here, if I look to the bottom of the top chart, we're projecting at this time capital outlay expenditures of 83.5 million, which is about 20 million higher than the February data, or excuse me, spending amount. Primarily, as the table indicates, this is coming from higher construction package 1 expenditures in March relative to February. My understanding is their contractor there has gotten into some of the work on the intrusion protection barriers, and we're starting to see some of that billing come through. The bottom left, we report vacancy updates for March, and unfortunately our new vacancies had equaled our filled positions in March, so we show a steady state there for that particular month. But again, a longer trend is we are certainly reducing vacancies month over month. Lastly, to the right is our RM match statistics. And again, this is just through February. As I'd previously reported, no activity in March. We have nothing more to submit, so we are waiting for the federal action at this point. They did not take any action in March, but again, earlier this week, on Monday, they did approve another $577 million. And so future board reports will reflect that update. And that concludes the financial office update. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian from any of my colleagues? All right. Thank you. Hearing none, Brian, thank you. And we'll see you later on. We'll move on now to section number 10, the Central Valley status report. Joe, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Section 10, I want to start by reminding everyone that Section 10 is referencing back to Rev 1 baseline, and it's to the February 2021 data. I anticipate that we have approved the new RBS schedules for CP1 and CP4, still working on CP2. So, and we will then start. My overpromise is that our May data for the July CVSR will be reflective of the new RBS schedules. This will link, as Brian alluded to hopefully implementing of the business plan and baseline Rev 2.
Joe, I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly. Then you think that will be updated and presentation based on Rev 2? Did you say in May?
It'll have the May data.
The May data, okay.
July.
Okay, fine. Okay, so in July is when we should see it on our report in F&A.
That's an overpromise, under deliver. Hopefully we'll be able to pull this off, and have that data in June, but I wanted to state that July is guaranteed to get it in. Now, also too, currently we are managing with those approved schedules. It's not reflected here, but we are managing CP1 and CP4 to those revised schedules at the confidence report level. Okay. So, but it becomes too complex to be we have to shift uniformly in all of the projects as to have continuity with regards to this report. So I will delay that shifting. Okay. So let me start with, as a reminder, I will go through the executive summary, which is the front of this chart, but I will address the charts that are in blue on the executive summary. So page 14, please. Page 14. Page 14, basically, the gist of the 14 is this, is that we're currently, right now, our actual invoice is about 3.173 million to our projected 200 or 3,296,000,000. So what that tells you is this, that we're approximately a little bit over about 120 million off our projected pace as we move through this slide. I would not, right now, we're readjusting what it's going to take to fulfill ARA. As you know, the tracking systems, with the award of that'll give you an actual cost, so that what it costs to achieve ARA will fluctuate a little bit. Okay. Now, moving down through the next is slides 15 through 16. This basically tells you the same. It also indicates here, as I talked to you last week, that the gradient of the blue line is the slope of that blue line is what you should be looking at. You can see that it is relatively flat. However, though, what you're going to see, though, that currently right now is that the February, our total invoice amount, right, and you'll see that in slide 16. Slide 16, you can see that our total current invoice amount is about 30.5. However, though, as indicated by Brian, you're seeing the construction in the valley have been down there for the last couple of weeks, starting to upturn. We expect the March to be about 49, as Brian reported. I expect April then to crawl up to about 60. I would assume then you will see these 10 million increments, probably up to about a steady state in the summer of somewhere between 80, 90 million per month. All the indicators are trending in that direction as we speak. Now, also too, it's important to understand right now that our current contract values for total current contract values is about $5 billion. And of that $5 billion, we are about 63% expensed. Total change orders for this month, and I'll go through them in depth and follow on slides. There's 11 change orders for about $9.3 million. Now, as I said before, and you'll hear this as I go through this, I will talk to you about how I think the valley is going to open up. As Brian alluded to right now, CP1, good news is that the IPB work is dramatically picked up. I assume that we're going to achieve approximately between $10 and $15 million, if not more, per month on the IPB. But what's also important, though, too, is, as you saw in the prelim, some of Mo's shots that he showed you, the visuals, that you see work in the north opening with 27. You also see that in the month of Utilities are moving in the month of June. You will see the construction start in Avenue 15 and a half. In the central section of CP1, you will see that the shoe fly is complete downtown. We have a cutover date. UP has given us a September cutover date for that. Will allow then the city has given us permission to shut down Ventura Avenue, which will allow us to start construction on the G Street bridges, probably in the April-June timeframe, which is a great sign to start seeing construction in the downtown. And then also at the further end down at the last crossover of 99 on American, you will see in the next couple of weeks, the RICO walls, the panels starting to go up, which is the panels. If you go down there, you'll see the elevated structure at 99. Going down, looking south, you will see another bridge structure. Those panels, basically the panels that go between those two structures, are approximately 40 feet high that will contain the fill in between them. So all good work happening in CP1. CP2-3, you're going to see
So just as a comment with regards to all of what you've just said, which is certainly good news for the people in and around the city of Fresno. I assume that you've kept the city aware of your expectations on the construction schedule as you've just identified.
The city is heavily involved with all that. We require their coordination and collaboration with regards to being able to shut down Ventura. I've briefed previously before. We've been extremely cautious with the city as in to ensure that when we do close a street down, that we're immediately able to implement construction and that we do not repeat the mistakes of past, and that is closing streets down with no apparent follow-on construction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. In CP2-3, you're seeing that the 35,000 foot Tulare viaduct structure is started. It's underway down there. It's a big, huge structure. It'll generate revenue. We are also going to open up one structure in March, two more in April. Following in April, the first week in April, we'll open up what we call the last 6 miles of guideway construction. So you're going to see guideway construction in 2-3 pickup. Okay. CP4 is pretty much held steady state. And they're advancing their work really without any issues. Okay. So that's kind of the summary, but the general news is that you'll see in our manning too is I think the impacts of COVID are starting to dissipate with us, and you're seeing construction now picking up and ramping up into the summer. It's all good news. Utilities are moving, especially with regards into the city of Fresno. All right, moving on to page 17. Page 17 is a new slide. This shows you basically all of the risk contingency. You can see that the contingency originally started from the program baseline was about 2.7 billion. We're currently down to about 731 billion, right? We forecast with execution of change orders that about the end of June, that contingency should draw down to just below 500 million.
Are you in a place where you can discuss what the reduction will be between now and June? Or are you still in?
Tom, I can tell you that right now the focus right now is that we're resolving. We're just resolved 15 and a half, which will allow construction to start there. They should be in the latter stages of resolving in CP1. Is going to be the big push. CP1 should be able to resolve Golden State, the utilities. That should have been wrapped up early next week, followed by what we call Golden State, actually the relocation of Golden State to its new alignment. Those change orders will follow. And then the following change orders to that is 2 change orders that are up north. And that is going to be hopefully is the BNSF access roads. These are roads that were required as a result of us putting up IPB to give access to UP and BNSF. We should have that change order done. And then maybe if we work diligently, I think we might be able then to pull in one, either the missing 2.5 miles change order or Belmont or McKinley. So hopefully we'll be able, predominantly the drawdown is going to be in CP1. These change orders in CP1 are all the result in third-party inputs that predominantly go back to the original award of these projects that required us to this time to resolve them, as to be able to finalize these designs. As I've told you, all of the designs and the CPs will be basically, the substantial designs are done by April. So that's allowed us then to finish the designs, as in to be able to go back and execute these legacy change orders. There's a series, as you're aware, in CP23 of legacy commercial issues. My goal is to be able to brief the board on those legacy issues in the upcoming board meeting, as in to give you insight into those legacy issues.
Hey, Tom.
Yes, please. Yes, go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, I just wanted to comment on this. I will be saying at the broader board meeting later that next month I'm requesting that we provide the entire board in the May hearing with a broad construction update CP by CP. And so I want to flag that as in my CEO report today. I'll be noticing that, but I think now's the right time to talk about, as Joe said, we're getting to 100% design. All the scope is now in. As we get to that 100% design, we now know the specific commercial issues that need to be settled going forward. And so I'm looking for a comprehensive construction update to the whole board at the May hearing.
Okay, I think that's great. And just for clarification, so when you talk about 100% design, this means design that, I want to just confirm this, this means design that the design build contractors have completed and the authority has reviewed and agreed upon or agreeing upon. Is that what that all?
These are design packages that have gone through ready for construction, up the last stage, which is what we call RFC. So the ready for construction designs.
Okay, but
So Tom,
those designs were prepared by the design builders and then reviewed and approved by the authority. And
the authority and the associated third parties.
Sure.
What they do is they give comprehensive buy-in, and then that has allowed us then to finally establish the footprint of the project, as in to define the right-of-way numbers. And you can see in the right-of-way numbers, as I brief in the future, that there's very little fluctuation lately in these numbers. We've come to a pretty good consensus of what it takes to finish off.
Tom, I just want to make one other comment that, as Joe, I think, reported earlier, and I know it's certainly in the F&A documents, that, in CP4, we're at 100% design, 14 construction packages are required and are in. In the other two, CP1 and CP23, we're at 92.5% designed. And so those will conclude, according to, Joe and his team, end of the month here in April. We expect to bring everything into that 100% range.
Great.
And that's why I think May is then the right time.
Yeah.
Okay, here's where we are. Here's what we got to achieve going forward. And that's why.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, I will, as always, I will go through each of the CP change orders at the end of this presentation. Okay. Now, CP designs is next on the executive summary. I'm not going to talk about that. We pretty much exhausted that subject already. Moving to page 18, construction labor. Can you please show slide 18? There you go. Okay, you can see that we're bouncing back up right now. This is also indicative of what I project. I project March. We already have basically the March data. March data is going to be pretty much flat, consistent with the April, just under 1,000. In April, though, you're going to see it starting to make this climb. We'll be back up to approximately the high point that we showed in that October, November, back to about 1,100. I'm probably going to push in the summer, probably to 1,300, 1,400. labor, average weekly labor out on the site. So all goods. What I'm trying to portray here is that I think the valley is waking up and coming out of what I kind of viewed as a slump in construction. Okay. And also, too, I want to point out an executive summary. You see the decrease in quarantine number of COVIDs, which is a good sign that I think is kind of reflective of California itself, that the impact of COVID is starting to diminish on us. So very excited. Okay. Now, moving to slide 19. Okay, we have basically 180 miles of the 119. We're a little bit behind according to this RBS here. I think you're going to see this pick up though in April when we hit the 6 miles and we pick up down CP1. We're going to be pretty much close to that projection. And you're also going to see the structures in this April period also close back up to be right on projection. We were a little bit slow in this moving the utilities in the winter. That's what's kind of prevented us to come up. So most of those issues have been resolved. And again, as I think the number of structures is going to, I know the number of structures is going to increase. And then we'll push up. Good sign with basically CP1, CP2, 3. Okay. Moving on to slide 20, small business. Small business right now, we're about just the CPs. I don't want to contradict what Brian said. He's looking at the total program with regards to the CPs. We're about, currently right now, we're about 18.4. This is to the January data, right? So right now we're about $530 billion have been allocated to the small business program. Now, switching to slides 21 through 24. Okay, this is, as I stated before, this is probably the long pole, the biggest risk that is emerged into the program. All the other risks pretty much have been resolved with third parties and those and land conveyances. This is the last of the big risks that's probably looming and holding our construction down, and that is right away. Okay. As of right now, okay, we have delivered, as you can see to this chart. Actually, I'll start from the top. We've acquired 1796 to the 2,287 parcels. Okay. Now, that lies just basically just under 490 parcels with regards to this report. Okay. Now, it's important also to understand where those remaining parcels are. There's 166 in CP1, 256 in CP2-3. As you would expect, since CP2-3 is nearly twice the length of CP1. And then we have approximately 57 parcels remaining in CP4. Large majority are associated with a couple landowners. Hopefully, the transference, they're predominantly with irrigation districts. Hopefully this month we'll resolve those issues. CP4 numbers will go down. And then 2 is a large number are associated with the SR46 relocation and the Caltrans roundabout that's associated with that relocation. We're looking at that plan right now for CP4 and that SR46 relocation. We're underway having discussions with Caltrans right now to see if we can move that work in its entirety to Caltrans, as in to allow them to they're funding the circle, we're funding SR46. This will allow us then to combine both projects and to mitigate the construction fatigue on Wasco and try to gain some efficiency in construction by combining both these projects, even though they are dual funded, into a more efficient single contract. Okay. Now, also too, it's important to bring out here is that we delivered approximately 16 parcels in February. I expect to deliver about 17 in March. And in excess of 20 in April. Now, underneath the new director, Kim, is that you're seeing that we've implemented a little bit different strategy. We've put in a 30, 60, and 90-day kind of improvement plan for right away. We're doing a little bit of restructuring, re-emphasis. We're going to try to focus on going out and quickly achieve some of these small parcels that count as one, right? And see if we can expedite the procurement of some of these small parcels, as in to knock down the total number of parcels that are remaining. Okay. Now, this is very strategic, especially to 2-3, where at almost every site that we open, we have to mitigate with regards to some type of right-of-way impact. Predominantly small sliver type stuff that affect the toe of an abutment or something. So I would like to get as many of these small slivers as we possibly can, as to try to eliminate some of these out of sequence mitigation efforts that we are now having to implement. And that is now moving in through the next slide, please.
Joe, just as when you're looking at your right of way like this, and say if you've got roughly 480 or so parcels left,
Mm-hmm.
so is your schedule out far enough? I mean, so your expectation is, as you pointed out, 16, then 17, and then 20 through the last two being March and April. That obviously is continuing. I'm going to not say obviously. Your expectation would be that it will continue to grow. Otherwise, we're looking at like a 2-year period to complete the receipt of all the right of way.
Yeah, but I want to approach it. The problem right now is that the parcels that we can acquire, right, which I think right now is going to be between 40 and 60% of that remainder of 490. Okay, the other, opposite 40 to 60%, and how it goes, it's going to have to go through the condemnation process. And if it goes through the condemnation process, then we're subject to the schedule of others. Now, we've accounted for that in the new RBS schedules. Okay, we have risked those out and are accounting for if we have to go to condemnation in the P70s. Also, too, with any situation with right-of-way, we have what I call a contingency plan, a workabout plan, to see if we can start structural work, right, and see if we can isolate the right-of-way impacts. That would be is that there's no right-of-way that impedes the abutment type structures. Okay, that the right-of-way impact is down in the ramps in the abutment areas, the type 2s. If that is the case, then my strategy right now is to figure out a way, even if it's out of sequence, as in to get that work going, because as you will see in the new RBSs, is that because of the number of right-of-way parcels, that there is duplicit near critical and critical paths for each of these projects, okay, that are within days, 30 days. A delay in any one of these near critical paths then shifts it to critical path. So any place that we have the opportunity to use our time wisely is to use that time wisely, and then to try to push up as much construction as we can. Because if we wait and try to do all this construction at the end of these projects, what we will do is that we'll put a drawdown on the labor in the valley, and labor will become the limiting factor. Also, we need to be conscious right now of another issue as we get clarity in these schedules, is the coordination and permitting of being able to work adjacent to BNSF. Right now we have basically 5 permits of about 3-mile lengths to be able to do that. As we opening more and more sites, okay, we then start putting pressure on those 5 permits, what we call Form Bs for the NSF. We're working with them right now to see if we can mitigate that and increase the length and the number as we speak. Okay, so very, very conscious of all the risk factors that are affecting construction right now. Okay, also here you're seeing that this is to the Rev 1, the impact that shows about we're about 100 parcels delinquent. In your executive summary, I tell you exactly where those are delinquent. In most cases, the RBSs in Rev 2 have mitigated these impacts, right, and are accounted for in the projected construction schedules, with the long pole being basically, and it is April next year for CP4, and then in about December of 23 for CP1. Okay, that's pushed out. Okay, so that is, so you will see this when we shift over into the new baseline schedules, that these delinquent parcels will be pushed out and the delinquency will not be as impactful as shown by this slide. Next slide, please. Railroad parcels, as I've indicated previously, month after month, railroad parcels are not an issue. We've worked out the procedures and the methodology to deliver parcels upon demand from the railroads. No issues there. Next slide, please. This shows the land conveyance. Our land conveyance, again, is moving without impact with regards to the procedures of land conveyance, with regards to what we call the first tier, and that is land conveyance that must be done prior to the removal of utilities. In the previous life, Director Kim had worked out these processes predominantly with PG&E. This is no longer a risk to the program. A year ago, this was a significant risk to the program. Next slide, please. This talks about the third-party agreements. Third-party agreements are progressing. Again, minimal impact. There is only one third-party agreement that is impeding right now work start, and that is down at the city of Wasco at the train station. We're trying to get a grade separation agreement through them. They have linked that through, as you would expect, to their to the farm labor housing issue. We have a strategy. If we have to, we can't separate it. We will mitigate it and continue with construction if we have to. Next slide, please. So it takes you to the tail end of these agreements. Now, the good news is that the North Kern, I just got word yesterday. I tip my hat to Kendall Bombank Council for doing an excellent job. The North Kern issues have been resolved. That agreement, the last set language will be finalized in the next couple of weeks. That will also allow us then to start construction in North Kern and to achieve the right of way that we need from them. Very good news. Okay. Hopefully semi-tropic will be this week also. I had received confirmation from their director that they should be giving us their final inputs this week. So if we do not receive them, then we will have to look at alternative methods with regards to semi-tropic. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to go now. If you don't mind, I will brief to the change orders. Let's move to my glasses. Let's move to page. Actually, is there any questions before I jump into the change orders to what I've briefed so far?
I have some questions, but it's going to be related to budget.
Okay, good.
I have a question just on the city of Wasco.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought we had helped them submit a grant to help deal with that demolition issue. Is that true?
We did.
Okay, and have we heard on that?
Yeah, Nancy, can I jump in on this? Sorry. We didn't help them submit a grant. We submitted a grant.
Okay.
Yeah, the idea is to seek federal funding to finish some work around SR 46, which includes the mitigation of the farm worker housing issue.
Right.
So we have pursued that grant. I believe the awards are going to be announced next week.
Okay, thank you.
So we're pending on that right now.
Okay.
Brian, does that take care of the demolition of that shelter that they were talking about?
Yeah, and I mean, look, we can go back and forth on this. I just, I'm going to say again for the record, since we're talking about this, we reached an agreement with them well before I got here in 2016 on moving forward on building new farm worker housing, which we spent $10 million to do. That is now open, and the farm workers have been relocated. My view is on that prior issue, the contemplation of demolition was never considered. And so the remaining buildings on the old site are definitely a problem, and they're blight. And so while there's been a lot of finger pointing, my view is we ought to be working together and collaboratively to get to a reasonable solution. That's why we came up with the federal grant idea. And we have garnered support from elected officials on pursuing that grant. And again, we'll look forward to hear the answer to that question next week. But the grant will include some funding to help us take care of the demolition issue.
Yeah, I know the agreement was, we weren't responsible for that. So, but we're doing something in addition to what we agreed to.
We are. I mean, because I think, I guess I'll just tell you my view on it, Ernie. We are down there in construction. We are working with that community. We have more construction to do in that community, and we should strive to be good partners. And so
it just becomes, I think, an optics
yes,
problem
yes.
with politics.
Yes, I agree. I would just say, my answer to it is to pursue answers.
Thank you.
Rather than argue about the past, let's pursue answers.
Yeah, I appreciate all your efforts, Brian. I knew about the grant request. I was just wondering where we were on that. So
Yeah. I believe Nancy, April 26th is the date for awards.
Okay, great. And I guess I was asking it because of the holdup on your grading permit from them. Is that, and it sounded like from Joe's report, those things were linked.
It sounds like they've linked on some of those, although, we'll see how that goes, and we'll continue to, if the grant falls through, we're going to have to continue to work on the matter, with the city, but we'll just have to see how it goes. And I think Joe and the construction team will work on some mitigation efforts there.
Okay. I appreciate all you're doing there. Thanks.
As I said before, so we have a plan. We have to implement it as it's pursued and advance the construction on the last structure in CP4. Like as Brian alluded, it would be nice to resolve this equitably and to keep pushing forward. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Moving to change orders on page 30, please. Okay, I alluded that there is a total of exact total of change orders. That there was a total, I think, of 9.3 million change orders. There's 11 total in number. So in CP1, you can see that there was 3 change orders executed during March, all for relatively small dollars, all underneath $2 million. Any questions with any of those change orders? Okay, moving to page 41. You can see CP23 out of 11 executed 6 of those contracts for just under $5 million. Again, is all relatively minor in nature. We executed a contract at Dover Avenue for about 1.5 million. It is impact associated with right-of-way that allows us to implement and start construction of Dover overcrossing. Okay.
So Joe, can you just a little bit more on the Dover Avenue then? So it's out of sequence work, and what is What's the basis for the change order with it
This is
being
the
out of
change
sequence?
order. I have to go pull exactly the change order. I don't have it memorized off the top. But if you were to apply section 17, which is the contract to it, it would boil down to is that we did not able to deliver the right of way in accordance to the right of way acquisition plan. So thus we're creating kind of an out of a sequence work for them. They're not allowed. We're not allowing them basically to turn over this complete site in natural construction sequence to the original plan. So thus we've done some work about it. Again, I had to go pull the exact change order, Thomas, to explain to you what is exactly the right of way and what is the exact work about that we're doing. But the essence of this is it has allowed Dover to start right as we wait for a piece of right of way to be delivered.
Joe, are these change orders, they're small in numbers, but are they T&M contracts?
No. These are all for fixed price.
I'm sorry?
These are all firm fixed. These are not. These are all lump sum firm fixed price. None of these are TM.
But they're in addition to their normal scope.
Yeah, they're all change orders. Absolutely.
Okay.
They've the added contract value. Every one of these, everything that I'm briefing is added contract value.
So Joe, these obviously weren't included in the contract. So when I look at $4.9 million, what percentage of, I just out of curiosity, what percentage of these change orders are they relative to the total contract amount? I mean, are we talking about change orders that are 5% of the total contract amount, 20% of the total contract amount?
Change orders with regards to the total value of the change orders?
Yeah, just on CP2 and 3, you know,
CP2, 3.
what's the total amount that we've issued in change orders versus the original contract?
Go to page 38, please. 38. You can see that we've executed $752 million of change orders on CP23, right?
And the original contract was $1 billion too?
Actually, the firm fixed price, the total value of the original contract price was 1.365.
And so we've got about 50% in executed change orders.
That's going to be more than that when this is, depends on how these commercial.
I know this was before your time. How the hell did that happen?
Because we've executed contracts. Go to page, CP1 is probably a better example. Go to page 27, please. Okay, CP1, you can see original contract price, which is about $1 billion. It is current amount is 2.2. We'll probably get all the scope in. It will be well north of 2.5, somewhere between 2.5 and 3. So you can see that for every dollar of original contract, we added $2 to this.
Yeah, I'd like to get the backstory on how all that shit happened. Pardon my French.
Brian wanted, this is all part of that going after federal money before we had right of way or even project design done.
If I could encourage some indulgement here from the members, I would just say this is part of what I want to cover in our construction update when we do it to the board next week. But you've heard me say before, getting into construction too early, not having the scope entirely accounted for, which is part of many of the years and years of third-party agreements between us, local governments, utilities, railroads, and others, that the scope has been largely redefined since the original contracts. And what we've been doing since we've been here is finalizing that scope so we can advance the construction. And as I remember telling Member Scutia in a board meeting, I think the last board meeting, the one before, we now capture that through the change order process. That's the only way to do it. So that's why those are up, because the scope of the final scope of the work is being defined. well after the construction contracts were in place. And as a result of that, to get that done and to move forward on the work, we have to execute change orders. And we're coming to the end of that process.
Yeah, Brian, I understand that, but I think we need a story behind, not to throw anyone under the bus, but the prior administration really screwed this thing up. And I don't think we're telling our story well enough, to the extent that, you guys had a whole pile of what to clean up in order to get this thing back on track. No pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, again, it's why I want to do a thorough construction update to the board next month. I want us to understand what it means to have the entirety of the scope in place, and then what that means for us moving forward. But again, we've been very transparent on lessons learned. We're putting in place new ways of doing business going forward. Those are all been articulated in each of the 3 plans we put out, from our 2018 business plan right through the business plan we just adopted, and the implementation of the stage gate process going forward. And so we've learned some hard lessons, and I think many people understand this being the first project of this kind anywhere in the country, with some original very difficult timelines from the federal government to spend money. There's reasons for how it got started, and now we're in the midst of transitioning to a better way. And I think as we do that and we move forward, we get this on track, we stabilize, and we move forward in a better way. And that's.
I appreciate that. I'm glad you're going to do that. My point is that the general public out there who are skeptical about what we're doing and skeptical in general about high-speed rail don't really understand that you picked up the baton several years ago with a new crew and are trying to clean up after the elephant here. And we don't publicize that enough, and again, as I said earlier, I'm not trying to throw people under the bus, but maybe someone's got to go under the bus so the public really understands all the hard work that you guys have put in to put this thing back in decent shape and move it forward. I'm concerned about that because of the public perception.
Well, again, Jim, I just say I appreciate what you said. I would just say it's, again, why I think once we have all the scope in place, the designs are settled, it's the right time to update in a public setting at our full board where we are and where we're going. And
I think that's exactly the right approach to it. And I think that the major issue from the outset was undefined scope, given all the things that were not available at the time. And I think that will become very clear with what you present in a month or so. Anyway, thank you very much for all the questions. It probably, I suspect, the single most important issue facing the project in terms of explanation to the public and to the board.
For the record, I think the most eloquent explanation of this is that of the chairman gave, who was the vice chairman at the time, in January 19 to the Senate Audit Committee. Is what I referred to as his Gettysburg address was a brilliant statement and explanation of how we got here. So it was a very good explanation. All right, now let me finish off here. I'd like to move to page 49, in keeping with this conversation. Page 49 is a summary of CP4. Here you can see original contract value was $444 million. Currently, we have surged a third of the value of the contract over. Okay. Also, you can also see what's important to understand here is that where the remaining contract balance is, we have about a third left to complete. So achieving that a year from now is very achievable. Okay. Now moving to change order slide CP4, which is page 52. You can see that we executed in the month of February 2 of the change orders of the 11 were executed here, all for relatively small dollars. Again, as we had, the biggest here is a third party interest, and that was putting in some irrigation casing at McCombs. to address a third party. That summarizes this report. I can talk to the rod nods specifically if you're interested into any of the development on the rod nods. The general is that on the rod nods, they are all progressing to schedule as reported in the CVSR. Questions, comments?
Any questions for, any other questions for Joe or any other management team?
Thank you, Joe. Good report. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
We'll let the report here, believe me.
Okay, hearing none then, colleagues and people from the public, this completes the agenda for today's meeting. And thank you for being with us. Don't forget that the board meeting starts at 11 a.m. this morning, and we hope you'll join us. With that, thank you, everyone. And the meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
See you at 11, everyone.